There are a handful of graphic design trends that we are absolutely loving right now, and we want to share them with you. So by the end of this video, you'll be introduced to 11 of our favorite current design trends and how we're using them on an everyday basis.
Well, hey there, and welcome to Pro Church Tools. This is the show to help you share the message of Jesus while we navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills, joined as always by Brady Shearer.
Every time we do an episode on social media, Alex, we usually use the source material of our social program,
right,
which works great for illustration, which works great to kind of explain the concepts and the philosophies behind the types of posts that we're creating. One of the questions that we get the most, though, when we do these types of posts is, how can I create these for myself? And
it's kind of a frustrating question to answer.
Yeah, because in truth, I'm not creating these myself. I come up with the ideas, which then we pass off to a designer, which then passes it off to an animator, who then sends it back to us.
Right.
And so to kind of just say, oh yeah, we use Canva,
right,
reduces it more than it really is possible to explain. But of course, we want to facilitate these questions as much as we can. Mm-hmm. And so what we are going to do in this episode of Pro Church Tools is bring on one of the primary designers who works on the social program.
Yeah.
His name is Scott Baer. Scott is, full-time here with us at Pro Church Tools as a product designer and also designing within the social program itself. Mm-hmm. Scott, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hey there.
Hey there. Well, hey there. This is the first time we've got somebody who's on the line with us. That's new. That's different. We're going to see how this goes. Scott, the first thing that I want to ask you is, when it comes to the social program, you've been now designing on it for a couple of months. How were you introduced to it, and how is it unique when it comes to maybe a different type of design work?
Yeah, I think social is so unique because it can be so short-lived at some point, but at the same time, it can be super effective and engaging. So we're like, if I do like a logo design or something like that, that would last for a while, but really what we're trying to do is just engage people right away and get their attention. So I think it's super fun because I get to try a ton of different things.
Yeah, that's important because when I create, and just to give a behind the scenes on how we kind of create this social program, I'll have this Google Sheet for a month. So I just finished the month of October, I believe. So I've got 31 days, and I kind of fill in the entire Google Sheet with the copy for the post, with kind of the style of post we want to create. Maybe there's some inspiration or a couple of notes to explain something that might be a bit more abstract in nature. And then, Scott jumps in and he starts creating designs for each of these. One of the cardinal rules of social is repeat equals defeat.
Right.
And that refers specifically to the design of these posts. And so every single post, Scott, you have to create something that's completely different from the other. Like, we don't want any carryover, and that's got to be a challenge a bit, right?
Yeah, it is. It's also the part of the fun.
Yeah, because you don't have to create, this is why we're like, how much can we mess up this design? Like, how ugly can we create? How much brutalism can we force into this design? And you know what? If it's too bad, hey, tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah, it's like, hey, Scott, those 30 pieces of really great content you made last month? So yeah, keep that up. Just make it look nothing like last month.
I think a lot of people are trying to make the best design possible. And I really think that's kind of not the right direction to go. I think really what you need to constantly be doing is trying stuff and failing and trying it again and failing again, and then trying to learn from that and see what works, which I think is awesome from this social program because there's so many different things. I'm not just saying that because I'm working on it. They're my stuff, but I think I'm learning a ton. Like, a lot of designs you see aren't the first ones that I work on. And so all that to say is, I think just be willing to be flexible. And then also just trying to make sure you're clear on the goals, not just, I'm going to make a cool post that I think is cool, but really trying to understand what you want to accomplish. If you want more people to come to church, sign up for a group, engage with you, do something focused on actually accomplishing something rather than just making a cool looking post.
Yeah, that's super helpful, Scott. I think this content is going to be really helpful for folks who are listening who want to try and do some of this stuff themselves. There are so many great free tools, but also affordable design tools and YouTube tutorials and everything, right? Like, if you want to go for it, like you can learn how to do some of this stuff. And so I'm really thankful that you have the opportunity to chat with us today, so we can kind of hear where your headspace is at as a professional designer and give us some insight as like, okay, I'm a volunteer or I'm a worship leader at church and they want me to do social. Like, where can I start when I'm looking at a blank canvas on Canva? So we picked out like 11 of some of our favorite designs that you've done, and we just kind of want to have a look at each of them. Our viewers are going to be able to see them, and I just kind of want you to walk us through each of them and speak to maybe what you were thinking going into the design based off the copy, and then when it came to the design, like what elements you chose to, like you said, grab that attention and go for that engagement.
Cool. Sounds awesome.
So this first one we have, you're seeing it if you're watching the video right now. It says, brighten our day with the third most recent picture taken on your phone. Go. So this is a great post to kind of get some interaction, especially on Facebook, people responding with some photos from their phone. So what were you thinking when you designed this post here?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I think it's, again, really important to see what are we trying to accomplish. So this one is super obvious, but I really wanted the attention to be completely on the call to action, which is we want you to share a picture. So you'll see it's in red, which is usually a good focus thing. Red and bold is a way to get people's attention. And then I went so literal to even point arrows. And a couple things on this that we'll talk about also with tools. I bounce a lot between Procreate. It's an app on iPads, as well as Photoshop. So if there's something that's kind of hand-drawn or more brush-like, I'll be using Procreate with that. It's $10, but honestly, it's got all the different brushes and everything that it would take me like hundreds, if not even more dollars to be able to get all those different tools. So that being said, it's I just kind of want to make it more of a fun, kind of creative, but very focused, simple design.
Yeah, I like the watercolor. I like the hand-drawn arrows. The next post is kind of very opposite. If that one's more like, freehand and just kind of like
sketch-like.
Yeah,
almost.
sketch-like. That's a good word. The next one's like very like regal and sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Nice. Regal. With this one, since it's going to be more text heavy, I want to lean on the fact that we read left to right. So I put all the text on the left side, and then made the other elements a little more secondary. So you'll see the Bible video, as well as the title there. And kind of made it a little muted and easier to read since it's text heavy.
This is definitely one of the challenges of the social program. Not for me, because I'm creating the challenge.
Right.
But I'll be like, all right, here's like 700 words. Fit it on a post. Also, I want it to all be on the screen at the same time.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we know that these list posts do really well on social. Like, people engage with these a lot, and it's an opportunity to learn something. We use these posts a lot for spiritual practice, right? Like, whether it's talking about something from the scriptures or giving us some action points, like there's a lot to pack in here, and it's all got to get on there. So using that tool of, we read left to right, so throw that text on the left. So when people hit this post, they're reading right away. That's really, really smart. This next post, I love this design. It's, to me, you're probably going to tell me that I'm wrong, but like, to me, it's kind of got this retro feel to it. This was something that when you showed this to us, it was like, oh, this is new. This feels fresh. So tell us about this one.
Nice. So this is one that I bounce back and forth between Procreate. I took a few brushes and made those shapes, and then kind of did that retro look. Again, with just the eraser tools. It's just so much. If you have an iPad, just buy it. You'll be amazed. So this one, again, I kind of wanted to get that retro look, just thinking of like backyard barbecues. But then again, the call to action is just so massive, and hopefully just stops people in their tracks. Name one thing and then get what we want.
Yeah, the comp says, name the one thing you don't like on your burger. And the way that the social program generally works is there's a column in our Google Sheet where I can include a clip from Storytape to include in the composition.
Right.
And so we have a clip from Storytape that's, a barbecue. And so I was like, hey, Scott, use this in your design. So he kind of fills the whole canvas with that. And then there's the big text, name the one thing you don't like on your burger. And there's so much stuff that's going on to bring the whole comp together. And what I appreciate about this design is that, you can see like some of the black dots. There's obviously the eraser streaks that are rainbow different colors. Like, it really easily could have descended into you tried too much.
Right.
There's way too much going on here, but thankfully it all works together, which is the sign that you should be doing this and not me, because I'd be like, oh, just add one more thing. It's, oh, you've overdone it.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got
so
a post. It's a question post. The question is very simple. What's a familiar Bible verse you return to in times when you need it most? And Scott, I think you hit on a trend here that I'm seeing a lot and I like, where it's like this, there's this huge drop shadow on the text, but the text is it's really wavy.
Yeah. So this one, I personally just have always loved drawing 3D shapes. That's kind of where I just doodle, which is a lot of fun. So that just kind of came to mind. Again, a lot of this there's not always a lot of reasoning behind stuff. Sometimes it's just simply because I like it, and then it turns out great. So this is one where I kind of wanted that drop shadow to look not so stiff, but it's more just kind of ragged, just to contrast the very sharp, clean look of it's a red with white text on black. And this is one where I went back and forth trying to figure out how to do it right. And this is kind of how it turned out. But again, kind of your last point of just keep throwing stuff at it. I think you could totally do that. And actually, if you're asking the question, what's a familiar Bible verse? Someone might think, oh, let's just throw a whole bunch of common Bible verses like John 3:16 and all this. But sometimes less is more, making it simple so that it actually gets your attention, not it's overwhelming.
Well, isn't that probably how most design trends start? It's just somebody doing something that they like, you know? And it's oh, somebody else sees it. They're like, oh, I love that. And it just comes out of personal preference. Because if we're all just scrolling through Dribbble or looking at Elevation and emulating what everyone else is doing, we're just going to be in this feedback loop of always doing minimalistic design, right? But Scott just kind of leaned into, I'm doing some stuff that I know people are going to like, but I really like this, so I'm going to style it this way, and maybe it's that really connects with your audience. So I love that. The next post here, Scott, is a quote post, and we do lots of quote posts from all different types of sources. And I'm curious to know, you can speak a little bit to this post as well, but just how you approach, because quote posts are a type of content that we do repeat, how you are approaching the design differently so that we're not repeating the design, and as we know, repeat equaling defeat.
I actually really like this one a ton. And so with this quote, with most quotes, I try to pull out a couple key themes that really help. And I think that's why quotes are honestly so fun to work with. So this one, the two words that stood out to me are imperfections and the word not. So what I tried to do is there's a kind of a red background. And then there's the image that I did was kind of like a big sideways slash. And so simply, even if you didn't read English, you'd still be able to kind of get this big no. And even I did these highlights behind the text that weren't quite aligned. And so with that, I think sometimes you can add these different elements to be able to really enhance what the words are already saying. Again, I think the hard thing is not doing that too much. Don't take things too literally. But I think just enough sometimes makes it stronger.
Yeah, it's a really fine line to walk where you can easily overdo something, and it's it works better if it's a bit understated. You don't want it to be too obvious. Though, with that being said, we have literally done comps where we've used Microsoft Paint, and then someone writes God loves you, and it got insane engagement because people are I remember Microsoft Paint.
Yeah.
I love the rectangular drop shadow. To me, it looks like highlighters. We have this on prochurchtools.com. Anytime that there's a link, a hyperlink within a blog post, it looks like a highlighter underneath. I think I first saw this design trend on Bloomberg a couple of years ago, and I absolutely love it, which I think is why I picked this post out. On the next post, simple question. The question is, what was your favorite childhood show growing up? There's a lot of geometric shapes, circle, kind of like a rhombus type thing. Don't test me on my geometric shapes and lines. But what I love about this post in particular, Scott, is the color. I think I'm always finding myself resonating with the colors that you're choosing. Here, there's there's a coral green, there's an electric purple, and a soft, more powder blue. How do you choose your color schemes like this? These three work together so well. Are you just kind of picking a single color and then matching it with a tool, or how did you get there?
That is a super good question. So a couple things on that. One, with a post for every day for this program, it's really easy for me to kind of get in the groove and start loving I'm really loving really rich blues and reds this month. Or also, it's kind of depending on the music I'm listening to. And little plug, most of the social program has been inspired by Ryland's playlists and albums that he shares with me. So whatever the mood is, it's probably based on that. But for this one specifically, I was actually thinking about an old Pixar short film with this like alien. I forget what it's called, but it's like kind of a cute little short film. So the colors like that inspired me, but then also the Jetsons inspired me with the little circles and lines and kind of that futuristic look. But again, super simple. It's kind of interesting. You just pull from years of random thoughts that all kind of come together at once, and somehow they make something sometimes good.
Yeah, I love that one because the question is, what's your favorite childhood show growing up? And the colors and the shapes have like this childlike kind of playful attitude. I love that continuity. Scott, these next posts, they're countdown posts, and the countdown post is like one of our favorite archetypes. It's turned social media for us into an avenue for spiritual practice, right? So when I am scrolling through my feed and I see my church's page, sure, maybe it's a quote, maybe it's a this, maybe it's a that, but when I see a countdown that says, hey, take the next 30 seconds and pray for your partner, or this one says, are you waiting for God to move in your life? Take 30 seconds right now to pray and ask God to remind you of his faithfulness. Like, I'm going to do that. And that's what we're going after here with the social program, with using social media as ministry, is giving folks who are scrolling through Instagram or Facebook an opportunity to engage in spiritual practice. So tell us kind of how you approach these countdown posts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think really big is that when you're seeing a countdown, you kind of want to stop to see what it's counting down towards. So no matter what you're doing, I think simply by nature of that, we're all just anticipating something changing or happening at the end of when 0 hits. So I think these are really great. And honestly, every time I've shown my wife one about like pray stuff, she's like, well, we should pray right now, as I'm like showing her a proof. And I'm like, oh, I guess we should. So they work. But these, if you were to design that, I think having the countdown large and prominent and clear is very important.
Yeah, we've done tests looking at engagement on the countdown posts, and when the number is smaller, it seems that engagement drops. And so I've often put into the notes of our Google Sheet, hey, let's make sure the numbers for the countdown are really big. Mm-hmm. But what I've also found is that going back to that repeat equals defeat mantra, which is so true, because the countdown post is always requiring numbers to be counting down, it's very easy to recognize.
Sure.
Whereas maybe a quote post or a question post, like, we're always seeing text and you can design them differently, but a number counting down is very distinct and recognizable. You're not going to really see it anywhere else unless you're using our social program, likely, which means it's more easy for people to go to your church to tune out. And so one of the biggest challenges with this type of post is how can we find ways to show this countdown in new ways, but not compromise like the size or the visibility of it. And these two especially stood out to me. And I wanted to ask, on the second countdown post where it says in the next 45 seconds, actively thanking God for every good thing in your life, we used this footage underneath the comp, Scott, of oceans, waves rolling in, and there's some type of like blend mode. And it's like a burn mode? Like which blend mode is that? Because I've always loved it.
That is a great question. I would have to look that one up, which I might have to do. So you put it in the show notes. But in Photoshop, there are a bunch of blend modes. And so if you even were to go on YouTube and look up Photoshop blending modes, there are probably a good dozen of them, maybe even more in Photoshop. And they really change the entire look. And actually most of all the posts that I do in Photoshop have all had some sort of blending mode applied. And sometimes they make it brighter, more contrast, sometimes a little more aggressive. Sometimes it makes it softer. So this one, I really like that it made it almost unnatural in the way that it looks. But I think for this post, it looked really great.
In my amateur design experience, but even like with manipulating photos, I find with blend modes, there aren't a whole lot of rules with blend modes. Like they'll all react to different types of images differently. So if I'm looking at an image and like, I know I want to put a blend mode on this, I'll just click through like all of them and just
that's
see
the
like
exact same thing that I do.
like, oh yeah, like which one of these works the best? And that's usually how I settle on a blend mode. It's like, yeah, I like this one.
I've literally done that 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So good to know I'm not alone.
Hey Scott, this next post, I mean, it's some of your finest work. I think you can just tell you worked really.
This one might be my fault.
You worked really. It seems like you spent a lot of time on this one. This is best things to do on the weekend ranked. Like, where did you even start with this post?
My gosh, this is probably one of the ones that took me the longest amount of time. Honestly, these are great because you're really working with Brady's inspiration. Just saying, hey, I like this. This is a standard meme right now, which is honestly, I think, a great idea where you could jump on this this trend. I don't know if Brady's gonna like hate all the thing I'm about to say, but with memes, it's great because they're short-lived, super engaging. Everybody kind of wants to jump on the bandwagon. Even now that there's like calendars for memes, like of different months, you can kind of see what's trending. So you can kind of jump on it, make your own version of it. So super fun.
Yeah, can you send me that calendar, please? Okay, we got two more, Scott. The second to last one is a quote from a Canadian rapper named Shad. The quote is, "You never question when you get the blessing, so don't get vexed when your life is stressed." The song title is Rose Garden, so I included footage from Storytape of roses. But what I wanted to ask you about this post, because what I loved about it, the reason I chose it, is because I love when we take an image or a photo or a video and we include it in like a geometric shape within the comp overall. I feel like it lets the text breathe a lot while still being able to include some visual imagery to go along with it. But I love the color palette here too. You've got some type of blend mode on the roses, bringing out the pinks, and then the actual text is kind of like a purpley type of blue.
Yep. So this one, couple things. The shape, I put the rose in a little mask, little rectangular shape, and put it inside. Made it probably a little smaller than all the other posts. Sometimes I do the photos of the videos full width, filling the whole screen. Other times, obviously, it works better to do this to allow the text to be the main focus. Sometimes also, I just keep messing around until I get it to where it's something right. Even your point about blending modes with a couple of others, you mentioned that sometimes you click to the one so you get what you like. That is 100% of what I do every single time. There is no science to it from my perspective. So this one, I also chose a more kind of geometric, maybe a little more brutal, robotic text or font to go with the rose, because I think if I were to choose something a little more too classic, like a serif, like Times New Roman or something like that, it might look a little too old and something you'd see in a 30-year-old building, something like that. So I wanted to make sure that it felt modern enough.
Yeah, I love this design. Definitely one of my favorites. Okay, Scott, last one here. This is our 11th post. Now, this is a post that's built for engagement. It's built for response. It's not a post that you just kind of, you expect to get a double tap out of. You're literally asking a question here. So going into a post like this, how do you approach it and say, okay, I want to promote engagement? What did you do intentionally here to promote engagement?
Yeah, so this one I think is really great because it allows people to start filling in what they think it might be with emojis, which is what we use in our communication every single day. But some more tactical parts of this is I really wanted the focus to be on the actual verse filled with emojis, which then after about 10 seconds of counting down turns into the actual verse. So it gives some time for people to say, let me try to figure this verse out before the timer stops. So with this is, again, back to what I was saying at the beginning of this is make sure you are very clear about what you want to accomplish, which is you want someone to try to figure out what the verse is. So I made that up front with a drop shadow, very focused on the actual verse.
There's so much that I love about this post. It's probably my favorite one that I included in this list. The gradient, the ribbon that says it's time for another, the 10-second countdown. The reason I think I love this post so much is because this idea was a variation on the emoji Bible story kind of post archetype, where we include a bunch of emojis and say, guess the Bible story. And the trouble with these types of posts is that you need it to be obvious enough that people can guess, but not so obvious that it's like, yeah, there's a emoji of wine and an emoji of water. This is not hard. And so this was a variation where I was like, oh, stories are a lot more recognizable than verses. Whereas if I can take a Bible verse and include certain words and replace them with emojis, you know, some of these, like, if you're watching this actually, and we're just using the still image, maybe we're using the video, and you've seen the reveal, but like I'm looking at an image right now, and like the end of the verse says, you know, and a speaker brain.
Right.
And that means and a sound mind.
Right.
But if you only have 10 seconds, and I love the 10-second countdown timer because people are like racing against the clock, I don't know how many people are going to get this.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you're going to get a ton of comments from this post, but I would expect the hover time to be a great deal higher than the average because people are looking at me like, what's the speaker?
Yeah.
Loud brain.
Loud brain. Loud thoughts.
Loud thoughts.
Wild thoughts.
What? And you just figure it out.
Sound mind.
It's a sound mind. You figure it out. I think the biggest takeaway I have from this entire conversation, Scott, is, you know, it sounds like there's a lot of experimentation that goes into your designs where maybe you have an idea, you kind of have like, if you imagine a compass, like you kind of know where north is, but you know, you're just heading in that direction and you don't know necessarily where you're going to end up. And that's why when people ask us, like, how do you design these? It's like, I think the biggest takeaway is focus on becoming a better designer, not making better designs. Because if you can do that, and you recognize how much of design is simply just experimentation and trying to figure things out as you go, that will lead you towards better designs as a whole, especially if you're designing in the context of social, where every single day you got to come up with something new. Any closing thoughts you want to leave with us, Scott, before we shut this thing down?
Yeah, I think on that, one of my favorite things I've learned is how to come up with better ideas. And one thing I'm going to leave you with is for all the Star Wars nerds out there, which I'm also one of those. The Boba Fett ship, if anybody's seen it, if you look it up, Star Wars, Boba Fett ship, was inspired by a street lamp. So when you're thinking of like, how do I come up with all these crazy ideas? Like, how did you come up with the ship design? How do you do all this? Like, somebody was probably walking to work and saw this street lamp. So I would say just as you're trying to come up with more ideas, just look around at anything, and inspiration for new ideas, new colors, new gradients, new shapes, new like comments, new arrangements, anything is probably out there, but it's not always in the most common of places where you'd think it would come from. So with that, I just say have fun, try it out. Again, I'm figuring this out as I go. There's no magical fix for it, but it's a lot of fun.
There's so much that goes into our social program. I'm coming up with the posts, sending over to Scott, sends them over to the animators. We're going to do another episode in the future with the animators talking about like, okay, you got to take these static posts in Photoshop, these PSD files that Scott has created. Now you got to bring them to life, add some music. They've got to be a certain time. They've got to grab people's attention with their motion. How do you do that? If you want to get involved with the social program, we'll send you a new social media post every single day created by us. This kind of gives you a behind the scenes look into how we do it. We also send you a pre-written caption. And there's unlimited customizations. So if you need to change the text to a different quote, if you've got some Bible verse, you want to change the translation, if you want to swap out this image of roses for a rose photo that you took, because you want your own photography to be in there. Hey, that's good with us. Unlimited customizations is included in the program. You can head to prochurchtools.com/products, and you can find the social program link on there to explore the full program, what it includes, and the cost and how to sign up. And that'll do it for this episode of Pro Church Tools. We'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. It means the world to us if you consider subscribing so you never miss another video.
And would you consider liking this video so I never have to see another dislike again in my life?